Hey, Jason Spangler here. I go by Santee Swapper on eBay. Wanted to film a quick video because today in my warehouse it's sort of shoulder strip sorting day. You might not be able to see by the camera, but I've got about 2,000 Council shoulder patches spread out on my sorting table. And I've got to get them in some kind of order, but then it occurred to me that this would be a chance to maybe film a little quick video and also to grab some of my resources that I have on my reference shelf and maybe just do a little tiny history of collecting shoulder strips. Now, I will start off by saying I am not an expert. You will not find my name as the author of any book having to do with Council shoulder patches. In fact, I confess I don't really collect them, but it is one of the oldest things in the hobby that's really been collected and well documented. When I say oldest things collected, I mean there's such a rich history of reference books that go with this collection. I want to share those today because I sort of have a nice little reference library on my shelf over there. And when I got these out, I was like, I've got all these reference books. Let me just kind of lay them out kind of in order and talk about the timeline of all this. So first off is this. Many of you will recognize these little tiny, tiny pocketbooks. Now, Council shoulder patches, what we sort of call the CSPs, they came out in the early 1970s. That's when they were issued. And when they came out, fully with all the colors and everything, I'm sure, even though I was just being born, I'm sure that it was a pretty popular thing for people to collect. And so right off the bat, you have these small little books that came out which try to document that. This book, for example, if I peel back here, was written by Pete Smith and Bill Price. Bill Price is a name you're going to hear a lot. This copyright 1973 and 1975. And essentially, I know you can't see it from there, it's a tiny pocket book that has pictures and then also has a little checklist. And the one that I have here has been marked in. So you can kind of imagine in 1975, you could have a book this small that would kind of document all of the Council shoulder patches, or at least the ones that these guys knew about. Here's another edition, the same book, Bill Price again, similar layout. It's got the information here laid out for you. Now, one interesting thing about shoulder patches that kind of makes it different from Over the Arrow is how it is cataloged. So let me kind of talk about that before I keep running through this history of reference books here. So when a council was formed, let's just use these examples of back in the 1970s, when a council issued its first patch, the difference with OA cataloging and Council shoulder patch cataloging is that the Council shoulder patch folks decided to do it sequentially. So here, let me explain that what I mean. Typically, most councils, their first patch is probably a T, which stands for twill. Now, if you're more familiar with the OA listing catalog system, they would use the phrase or the letter F to stand for a twill patch. But in this case, T stands for twill. And so if this was the first council patch from Valley Forge Council in Pennsylvania, it would be the T1. Now, if a little later on, Valley Forge Council were to issue a fully embroidered patch, it wouldn't be T2, it would be S2. So S, again, for solid, which sounds very familiar to guys who are OA collectors. So here's how it would work. You'd have like T1, T2, S3, S4. Maybe they went back to doing a twill, so it'd be T5, S6, T7, T8. You get the idea, right? I actually think that makes a lot more sense than the way that OA guys classify everything by F is for anything that's not fully embroidered, and S are all the fully embroidered flaps. I don't, want to get into the history of that. I just think that this actually makes a lot of sense. One thing you'll also notice about cataloging of these type patches is that a long time ago, if you think about, in the day and age of these little books, when you literally could put the entire known quantity of shoulder patches in a tiny little book, people got real picky about variations. And so today, if you look at a lot of these guys, I'm just picking up random bricks of patches here, that's where you're going to see something like T1A, dark red border, T1B, red border, these little tiny little variations that you and I would today sort of laugh at and say, oh, why the hell did they ever decide to do that? That doesn't make any sense. That's not really a variation. Come on, guys. But back when there just wasn't many patches around, and maybe these councils only had 1 or 2 or 3 issues, the collectors were paying attention, and if they saw a little variation, a little difference in the new Loom run that came out, they would document it. And so, especially in some of the early books, you'll notice a lot of varieties, A, B, C, all the way through. So that's something kind of different there. Another thing that's different about Council shoulder patches and how they're cataloged is they eventually came up with the idea that if it was a patch that was issued for a jamboree, they just wouldn't include it. Now, for those of us who are sort of OA collectors, that doesn't make any sense, because if you have a shoulder patch issued by the council for your jamboree troop, it's still a shoulder patch, but collectors get to write the guides, and so all these guides at some point, maybe there's one that mixed it in. I'll show you the guides in a minute. But at some point through here, they decided if there's a patch, a shoulder patch issued for a jamboree contingent, we're going to discriminate, and we're not going to put that in our book. And so even to this day, honestly, there's not a decent reference guide for jamboree shoulder strips. There are some. I didn't grab them because that would be a topic for another video. But jamboree shoulder patches go a long way back. They weren't always in the shape of a shoulder strip. They were rounds or other odd shapes. Eventually, they sort of take this familiar shape, and probably starting in like the, 60s, 70s especially, you see a lot more shoulder patch shape. But for these guys, for the cataloging folks, they just ignored shoulder strips, sort of leave them out. It kind of makes sense today, because today you might have a jamboree set that's like this giant set with like 12 different shoulder patches, and you could kind of say, yeah, those don't really fit. But I don't really agree with the idea that from the beginning that's kind of how they decided to write their book. The other little difference is that there's something called an SAP. Now, most council strips, when you look at them, they were meant to be worn by every scout and scouter in the council, right? So that's your regular T for twill, S for solid. However, there are, as many of you know, lots of special issue shoulder strips. And so this is where your abbreviation SAP comes out. And you could, all of these Philmont ones, FOS, Camp Anniversary, the list goes on and on, popcorn patches, all of those special issues get the designation in the catalog as an SAP. But again, it still goes in a linear fashion. So it might be SAP 51, SAP 52, S53, T 54. They just number them all the way through, so you have that chronological order of when the patches were issued, which I really like, actually. I think kind of makes a lot of sense. So let me kind of go back to the history here. Here's an early one here, Council shoulder strips, red and whites and all that good stuff. This one came out in 1979, the first printing. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but of course, collectors who are familiar with all this know that red and white strips actually predated our traditional council strips. And so that's a whole other area of collecting. Some of the later guides actually include red and white shoulder strips, because I think there was sort of a revival of collecting those, and people started paying attention, especially some key collectors that shared their work, and I'll mention their names in a second. But red and white shoulder strips probably were kind of not the sexy thing once these fully embroidered patches came out. Okay, so I mentioned the Bill Price books. So then this next group right here actually have first edition, second edition, third edition. See, it's a collection. It's a collection of reference books. This is the Local Council Identification of the Boy Scouts of America, written by Prince Watkins. This one, if you look in right here, it's got pictures, black and white pictures of the council shoulder patches, and somebody highlighted the ones that they have. I can understand that, wanted to keep track of it. And so you go through here, and there's even some examples of samples and some other good knowledge in the back about fakes and things like that. And of course, there's going to be in the back sort of a reference list. So just to give you an idea of the date, because again, this is trying to be a little history lesson, this first edition of this book was published in 1979. So this is 79. So we're still kind of in that first decade of these council shoulder patches being issued. But now we've gone from the Bill Price book, which is kind of small, to now Prince Watkins, got to get a little bit bigger. This is the second edition of the Prince Watkins book, and it came out in 1981, so 2 years later. That's that guy right there. Very similar layout here, you can see. And then we go on, getting a little thicker, getting a little heavier. This is the third edition. Third edition of this book came out in 1984. Okay, and this the guy who had this, that I got it from, had it all tabbed and kind of made his own homemade tabs. These are not original to the book. But again, lots of good information here. So one reason why I wanted to show you this history is because I think a lot of people today, especially if you were sort of grew up as an OA kid and you naturally collected OA patches and you kind of turn your nose up a little bit at collecting council strips, you kind of forget that there's this really, really rich history of cataloging council shoulder patches. And it's actually, today, would be a really easy collection to get involved with. More to come on that later. So in the 1990s, we're kind of leaving the 80s behind. The 1990s, a couple of other books. These are sort of random. Some different people tried to sort of do shoulder patch books because I believe that these Prince Watkins books kind of die out. And it's kind of getting to the point here in the 90s where you really can't picture every patch. So here's one, Council Shoulder Patches by George and Robert Sovers. I'm not sure when I got this. Probably got it at a traderie. And this one has some pricing information in it. So they actually have a little price guide going. And this is just a strictly Excel spreadsheet type thing that has all of the things in there. This one from 1996. This one, there's several different authors here. Let me just give them a shout out. Information for this guide has been provided by Joe Bentz, Bob Chapman, John Kennedy, Robert Larson, Nate Mercurio, Harold Rose, Jim Taylor. And this appears, there's a 1987 date here. The ITA Council Shoulder Patch Collector's Guide, which is the Illinois Traders Association, okay? So again, sort of similar, you have sort of the listing, but you also have an attempt at describing the patch. Now that's going to be sort of the pattern that follows here as we get into sort of the modern time of cataloging council shoulder patches. You're beginning to get so many patches that you really have to give lots of details in order to really figure out the one that you have. And honestly, this I think is what's kept me from collecting council shoulder patches, because some of these councils now are up to, like, I don't know, patch number 200, some of them are up to 300 council shoulder patches issued. And if you get these, like I have 2,000 patches here, if I wanted to take each of these stacks and I wanted to go through and try to find, okay, is this the T1 or the S4 or the SA7 or whatever, I would have to go through line by line in this book and painstakingly, and it would be painful, and this is why I don't do this, find the identifications for each of these patches and then try to find the value. So hidden in here, this actually happened to me not too long ago. I had some council shoulder patches I got in a collection. I scanned them on a little scanner bed and I put them on Facebook and I said, hey, they're $3 each, who wants one? And somebody responded very quickly and said, oh, I'll take that one from, I think it was Northeast Illinois Council. And I said, sure. And the guy later told me, he's like, you know, I'm going to tell you, I'm not actually going to buy this patch from you for $3. I'm going to tell you that's actually like a $100 CSP. You just didn't catch that, but it had a bigger fleur-de-lis or something. So, you know, that's the trick. I know there's got to be some good patches in here, but to know the difference between the one with the big fleur-de-lis and the little fleur-de-lis, and it's got the this versus that, it's really hard to tell. And these catalogs don't make it super easy. I guess I'm really spoiled because, of course, you know I'm going to mention OA images. If I have an OA collection, I just go on there, click View All Images, and I can visually scan really quickly and find it. So, still waiting for Bill Lobel or somebody who has a massive, massive CSP collection you need to get an intern, Bill. Come down there to your house and let them scan your patches for like a month or something, and then build a catalog online like an OA Images that has all of these, all identified, nice pretty scans so we can see them all. Or the guys from Patch Vault may do that if they can ever, scan 20,000 patches. That's a big, tall order. All right, so that's these guys here. Also wanted to show you a couple more just kind of from the 90s. This one, red and white council shoulder strips. Art Hyman, Rob Cutts. Rob Cutts, feel like I'm sure is with us. I think I've met him. Art Hyman, I don't believe is. This book was 1996, and again, this is just sort of a rundown. And here's some black and whites and a little bit of color in the back. So red and white strips are kind of getting their due. This one I have in my collection, the Blue Book First Edition, Council Guide to Council Shoulder Patch with varieties, and this is by Kirk Doan. And on the front here, he has those sample patches from the beginning. This book came out in 1987. Okay, 1987 there. So I guess that's a little out of order. Now, let me share these guys right here, because actually, if you're at all interested in council shoulder patches, to me, when I was sort of, coming up through this, these were the most fascinating books. I wish I knew what happened to this family, Stephen and Elisa Delman. But what they did for several years here, I've got the Volume 5. I've got, let's see what year Volume 5 was. I've got 3 books. I've got the 97 edition, the 99 edition, and then this one looks like it would be 2002. Okay, so somewhere in here there must be a 1995, must have been the original one. But anyways, let me kind of show you why I think these are so cool. First off, they're really nice, slick little books. But what they do is, in color, it lists all of the current council shoulder patches. But the real kicker for these books is it has a great paragraph explaining the meaning behind the council shoulder patch. So, a lot of these typical things, like say for example, oh hell, let's just pick one. All right, so let's pick, what would have been a current one? Let me see if I can find one. All right, let's pick Aloha Council. All right, I know I got that. So Aloha Council right here, and Aloha Council is in their book. So let me just read this for you. The council's name Aloha means hello, goodbye, and love in Hawaiian. The CSP represents the state of Hawaii, the Commonwealth of Northern Marianas, Republic of Marshall Islands, Republic of Palau, federal states of Micronesia, American Samoa, Guam, and Kwajalein. Sorry for mispronouncing that. I'm sure I did. The central design represents the shape of the world, symbolizing internationalism. Also pictured is the international date line located within the 3,000-mile span of the council's territory. I promise you I did not know that. The lotus blossom shape is a symbol of the 3 parts of the Scout Oath and is the council's proximity and ethnic connection to the Orient. I didn't know that either. The pyramid-shaped base symbolizes the strength of trained leadership as the foundation of the council's success. The coconut palms are suggestive of a Polynesian landscape. Well, now, this Aloha Council patch just got a lot more interesting to me because I actually understand some of the symbolism in it, which I think is so cool. So let me put that guy down. The one that's my favorite, of course, is my own home council that I grew up in. So let me just flip over to that one, which is the PD Area Council, because it's got some cool stuff. Flip over here to South Carolina. All right, and then I have to find it. So now that I've found the page there, let me see if I can find it here, which I know there's one in here. Let me find it. All right, there you are. Okay, so maybe you've seen this patch before. Here's a little patch. It's got a little bird on it. It's got a little dog on it, and there's a river. What the hell does all that mean? Well, let me tell you. Because if you have this book, it all makes sense, and I think it's so cool that it does this. All right, PD Area Council. PD refers to the largest Native American nation remaining in South Carolina. The PD River can be seen on this patch. The CSP contains images unique to this council. The fowl is a gamecock. Go Cox. The symbol of the American Revolutionary War hero, Brigadier General Thomas Sumter. He was nicknamed the Gamecock of the Revolution by the British because of his hit-and-run tactics. The city of Sumter was named in his honor. My hometown. That's how I was born. Thank you. The Swamp Fox honors another American Revolutionary War general, Francis Marion. Marion would battle the British and then disappear deep into the swamps, earning the name Swamp Fox. The town of Marion and the 25,000-acre Francis Marion National Forest also bear his name. The pine trees represent the National Forest. The crescent moon and the white palmetto are symbols of the state also found on the flag. So, there you go. It's got the sandhills, it's got the swamp, it's got 2 Revolutionary War heroes. I bet you didn't know that. There's all kinds of cool stuff going on in this design. And to this day, my council has never changed this design. Do you hear that, Michael Hesbach? Our current council executive, I think he has an idea about changing this design. I'm not so up for that idea because I think this is a really cool design. So we've had this for like 40 years, this design. And there's all the symbolism, and it means a lot to the people in the PD. So anyways, my personal opinion, everybody's allowed to have opinions on Facebook, apparently, especially. Sadly, these books are out of print. If I knew who these people were, I would contact them and say, please, God, let us make a PDF of this and put it on the internet for free. I think this information is so cool, so interesting. If I had a younger person who was interested in history and stuff, I would say, take this book and see if you can go and collect the patches that have these designs. The other cool thing about sort of doing a collection based off this book is is you can get just the regular issue patch. This patch, cloth back, pre-fleur-de-lis, early 1970s. You could probably get this on eBay or through Facebook, whatever, for like $4. It's like 40 years old. But see, these were made to be worn. These weren't made to be given out for the kid who sold the most popcorn or the guy who donated $250 to his council. These were meant to be worn. And so there's thousands and thousands and thousands of these regular issue CSPs were made. So it's a really cool collection to go and get. So there you go. All right, moving on into the future. All right, now we sort of have the beginning of sort of this modern era. I'm going to say this book right here, An Aid to Collecting Council Shoulder Patches Valuation Guide. Let me look at the date. Let's see here. Date on this is copyright 1990. This looks like the 1992 printing. It's by David Frank, Don Hook, Jim Ellis, Tom Jones. So this is sort of the what eventually become the modern version of what we know as the Council Shoulder Insignia Guide. This one is sort of a black and white job, and you can flip through here and you'll see same thing. That this is what I was begrudging earlier. It's just sort of a written description of all the patches, which I get it. That's all you can do. I just wish somebody would build a website. A little bit further on, this is probably, I think this is the last version that this crew of authors did before ISCA took over the project. And so let me give a shout out here. Steve Alston, James Ellis, Tom Jones, Blake Kesey. Also David Frank and Don Hook are listed on here. Postmortem, whatever you call it. You know, they're already passed away when this book comes out, but they're still given credit as having been authors. And then you go back to here, of course, those guys are on the book there. So this book I use all the time when I'm trying to identify CSPs. Again, same sort of thing. It's a price guide, and it also has the identifications, the numbers, everything else, okay? What I love about this book is, in the back, it includes the red and white strips. I literally yesterday, or 2 days ago, took a picture of one of these pages and sent it to a guy because I was trying to sell him a patch, and I was saying, well, this is what the book price is and everything. You know, just kind of giving him the information. There's lots and lots of, especially in the very back, red and white strips, military-based strips, all the different color combinations of Cub Scouts and Sea Scouts and all that, half strips, khaki strips. It's all in the back of this book. To me, this book is super invaluable because literally, you know, you might get in a red and white shoulder strip or something that's the half strip, and it might be a $5 patch or it might be a $500 patch. And if you don't know, you don't know. It's just, you know, it's a real hit and miss. So this book is a really good one for me. I've used it a lot. Now, as I mentioned, ISCA took over this project. So I bought a collection not too long ago that had this copy. This is 2011. And then when ISCA took it over, they put their logo on it. And today, this 2014 edition just has Blake Kesey and Steve Alston. This one here is very, very similar how it's laid out. It's just this giant listing of everything, goes on and on and on and on and on and on and on, okay, for thousands and thousands. I don't know how many pages the current edition is. I don't think they even sell it as a printed book anymore. I don't think they do, but it's available as a PDF on their website. If you join ISCA, then that's in their, I think their member side of the house. You can collect that. So, anyways, I wanted to kind of show you those books as just kind of an introduction into like the long history of collecting these CSPs. And again, if you haven't heard already, I really would like someone to make a website that would really visually show these, because I do think they're beautiful patches. I think there's a lot of neat history here. It's actually sort of inexpensive to get started with. What a lot of people will do is they'll go to the ISCA website and they'll print off one of the checklists. There's a checklist there of all the active councils, and I think there's another one for councils that have been merged. If you want to do the easy one, pick the active councils, and you can go around to the Tradery and try to pick up one of each of those. That's probably, I don't know, 300 active councils, something like that. Maybe it's getting smaller, but it wouldn't be too hard to get. The other thing I would suggest is that if you're going to do sort of a core CSP collection, you know, you're the collector, so you can decide what you could collect. If I was going to get into this, here would be my real simple rule. I would only collect council shoulder patches that were meant to be worn by every scout. I would not worry about the FOS, the popcorn, the anniversary, the, you know, Scoutmaster, Success Seminar, whatever all those SAPs are. I wouldn't bother with that. I would just focus on the real ones that are kind of the core ones that, you know, everybody could have worn, that also have this great imagery and history that these folks documented in their book. If anybody watching this video, if you know who these people are, the Delmans, please put me in contact with them. I'd like to just say thank you for doing this book, and, you know, encourage them to do another one, or let's figure out a way to get this information out on the internet, because it's great information. But you could go and collect those real super simple. I know one thing I'm going to do at my Traderie coming up is I want to give all the young scouts that come into the door, I'm going to give them a little checklist. Basically, you know, here's your scavenger hunt. Go find shoulder patch from every active council in our state. And so you kind of give them a little very, very achievable goal. They could run around and trade for them, maybe buy them for a couple bucks each. They're not very expensive, and put together a little instant collection of all the ones from their state. And then maybe, hey, maybe the kid grew up in Ohio, so they think, hey, well, let me go try to find some that have Ohio on them. Almost every council strip tells you what states it came from, so that's kind of a cool little thing. It'd be super easy to do. So I do think that CSPs are a neat thing to collect. I've never done it because just coming up through the ranks, I was just heavy duty into OA, but I think they're beautiful. I think there's a lot of history here. Like everybody else, I'm not a fan of all the SAPs and councils issuing, you know, 12 different versions every year just because they can sell them and make money. Good for them, bad for the collectors, but hey, that's okay. It's fine. Anyways, I've got a lot of work to do, and so I'm gonna be sorting some patches here. I don't quite know what I'm gonna do with some of these stacks. You know, when you get a stack and there's like here's one even from North Carolina, Tuscarora County. It looks like I've got about 9 of them in there. Not quite sure what I'm gonna do there. But some of these I'll probably scan and put on Facebook. Some will go on eBay. Some will go in my Antique Mall booth. Some will go to my Traderie. So I sort of have a theory for how this will work. But I need to clear out this table, so I've got a lot more work to do. So anyways, that's it. Sorry about doing this video the way I did. I wasn't able to see any of the comments and kind of respond to you guys. But if you have some comments, please post them there. And I'll be glad to sort of carry on the conversation as we go. But anyways, that's kind of my little video for today. I want to thank Brad England and some other guys that did videos live in the Scout Patch Collectors Facebook group. I didn't actually know you could do that. So this is my first one that I've tried to do, and hopefully it was kind of fun for you guys to see the old history and reference books. All right,